Feeling sorry for you, want me to introduce you to Grace? She's beautiful and a genius, you know.
Still infertile? What a miserable life. We could share some of our happiness with you. Being alone must be lonely, right?
While enjoying a coffee alone at a stylish cafe, I was spotted by people I never wanted to see again. It was my ex-husband, David, and Victoria. It's been 23 years since our divorce. The things they did to me still linger like a dark stain deep in my heart. But I reminded myself that I don't need to hold back or be timid around them. I stood tall. Infertile? No, that's not the case. Let me introduce you to my daughter. When I introduced my daughter, both David and Victoria were visibly shaken.
I didn't know this. You're a fraud.
David spat as he ranted uncontrollably. If he thinks I'll back down just because he's throwing out accusations, he's sorely mistaken. I was more exasperated than anything. But the person who completely knocked them down was someone I never expected. I'm Mary, a 52-year-old housewife. My only daughter, Julie, will turn 20 this year. Reflecting on how she's grown, I find myself nostalgic about the past. Somehow, I start remembering things from long before Julie was born. Now, I have a peaceful, happy family, but 23 years ago, I felt like my life was over, completely hopeless. My current husband is my second husband. It's his first marriage, but I was married once before. My ex-husband's name was David. He and I were classmates in college. We didn't interact much while in school, but after graduation, we ran into each other at a few parties. We hit it off and, after about a year of dating, got married when we were 25. Why didn't we notice each other back in school? We're such a great match now.
Seriously, right? If we could turn back time, we probably would have been together sooner, had kids by now, and even bought a big house.
We really did share a lot in common. Movies we wanted to watch, our favorite drinks, and even what we found funny. After we got married, we often talked about how we couldn't wait to have kids, get a dog, and watch everyone run around in a big yard. But 3 years into the marriage, we still hadn't been blessed with children. That's when things started to get strained between David and me. Another late night?
It's work. What can I do?
Of course it wasn't work. As I suspected, he was cheating on me. One day, David suddenly asked for a divorce.
I've fallen for someone else. I want a divorce.
I wasn't surprised, so I didn't resist the divorce. But his next words left me frozen.
I'm marrying Victoria.
David had a smug grin on his face. Victoria was a classmate of ours in college, too. She'd been my closest friend back then, and still someone I confided in. I had even told her about the distance growing between David and me.
Don't ever confront a guy about cheating. Girls who accuse and get mad are the worst. You're his wife, Mary. Just stay confident and let it go.
Victoria always encouraged me with her straightforward personality, cheering me up when I was down. By the time I realized all of that was a lie, it was too late. I lost David, and I lost Victoria, the person I would have turned to for comfort. After my divorce, David and Victoria got married right away.
Mary, I'm sorry, but honestly, isn't it your fault for not being able to have kids? Hey, Mary, don't look so scary. If you're going to blame someone, blame your body, not me.
I'll never forget those words Victoria said to me. I was heartbroken, But life is unpredictable, and soon I met someone new. My current husband, who worked at the same place, pursued me relentlessly. Even though I was done with love, let alone marriage, everything just fell into place, and we got married. The year after, I got pregnant naturally, and I was relieved to know I wasn't infertile after all. Life with the three of us has been simple but full of happiness. But that peace was soon threatened. When Julie started elementary school, I found out that David and Victoria's child went to the same school. Luckily, their daughter Grace was a grade above Julie, so they hadn't noticed us. Still, I kept hearing rumors about Grace.
Hey, did you know? The second grade teacher in class 4 quit. You know why, right? It's because of that girl.
Just saying that girl in second grade, and every parent knew who they meant. Grace and her parents were infamous. First, if Grace even slightly felt upset, she would start crying. Then, her parents would rush over and spend 1 or 2 hours blaming the teacher or the other child involved. One of the teachers even had a nervous breakdown from dealing with them. When Grace was younger, she would cry and hit others. She always acted like the victim, but she was clearly the aggressor. As Grace got older, she stopped hitting others. I thought she had matured, but instead, whenever something didn't go her way, she would immediately run to her parents, and they would punish anyone who upset her. By the way, this is what David and Victoria had to say.
Grace says she didn't do anything. She's the real victim here, being falsely accused.
I could understand why the teachers were stressed. With a reputation that bad, it was no wonder they were despised by everyone. But Grace was attractive and had decent grades. By the time she reached middle school, she had become fully aware of her appeal and started acting more subdued on the surface. She seemed to want to be the most popular girl in her grade, flirting with boys and tattling to her parents about any girls she didn't like, ensuring they were silenced. The rumors about her, whether she had turned over a new leaf or was still awful behind the scenes, never stopped. I used to think David and Victoria were ordinary people back in school, so it's baffling to me how they became so irrational. After my divorce, it seems our mutual friends harshly criticized them. Even then, they kept making bizarre and selfish claims.
I'm the real victim here. I got tricked into marrying a woman who couldn't have kids. What's wrong with divorcing her?
I just say poor David. He was struggling because Mary couldn't have kids. It's her fault the marriage ended.
Maybe that's when they learned to shift the blame. Our friends were so stunned that they simply distanced themselves, but David and Victoria took that as a victory, and in a way, it probably became a successful experience for them. Not wanting anything to do with them, I did my best to stay invisible at school events, trying to avoid being noticed. When Julie finally went on to a different high school than Grace, I breathed a sigh of relief. I thought I was done with David's family for good. Now that Julie is a university student, her life is going smoothly. She's not only doing well in her studies, but is also active in her club and social life, always surrounded by her friends. She even tutors as a part-time job, gaining social experience and managing her money well. I'm proud of how Julie has grown up. With no more ties to David, those memories had faded, and the past was no longer a burden. Maybe that's why I let my guard down.
Is that Mary?
A cheerful woman tapped me on the shoulder. Her voice was so bright, and she casually touched my shoulder, feeling overly familiar. She looked as if she had just run into a close friend, clearly happy. But I hesitated to turn my face toward her.
Oh wow, it really is Mary.
A man's voice followed, surprised, as he leaned in rudely to look at my face.
It's Mary. Wow, you've really aged.
Reluctantly, I turned my head, and sure enough, it was David and Victoria. David pointed at me and laughed loudly. It's been 23 years since our divorce, and we're all well past 50.
Look, Victoria, Mary's turned into an old lady.
David himself had sagging cheeks, and his receding hairline left a wide exposed forehead. Victoria, who was laughing hard, had deep wrinkles around her cheeks and eyes. I can't deny that I've aged, but they look their age too, so it's strange that they can laugh at others.
Are you here alone at a cafe, old lady? Isn't that a bit sad? Or more like, doesn't it feel out of place?
This is a trendy cafe. I was enjoying my coffee alone, which probably made me the perfect target for their teasing. And it wasn't just any cafe. It was in a terrible location.
By the way, what are you even doing here? This is an OBGYN clinic, you know?
The cafe was attached to a women's clinic. It's not just for patients stopping by after their appointments. Anyone can use it, just like a regular cafe.
You're over 50, and you still haven't given up on having kids? That's just sad. I might actually cry for you.
David pretended to wipe away imaginary tears as he indulged in his ridiculous assumptions. But it didn't stop at fake sympathy. The insults followed quickly.
Divorcing Mary was the best decision I ever made. If we had stayed married, I'd still be a wrinkled old man complaining about how we can't have a baby. What a nightmare. No thanks.
I hadn't said a single word, yet they could tear me down so effortlessly.
Do you feel sorry for yourself? Want me to introduce you to my daughter Grace? She's at the hospital next door right now, but she'll be here soon. Grace is cute and a genius.
Victoria nodded in agreement.
Still struggling with infertility? What a miserable life. We could share some of our happiness with you. Being alone must be tough, right? We'll let you have some cake with Grace to cheer you up. And in return, Mary, you can cover the cost of our cake.
I felt a headache coming on. I still have some coffee left, but should I get up and leave? It feels a little like running away, and I hate that. But engaging with these people is just a waste of time. It's better to just walk away. I bit my lip slightly and stood up. Just then, I saw Julie near the entrance of the cafe. She noticed me too and waved. I haven't lived a life that deserves ridicule from them. My family may be ordinary, but Julie, with her kind heart, is someone I can be proud of. Seeing her smile as she hurried over gave me courage. There's no need to shrink in front of them, I thought, and I stood tall. Infertile? What are you talking about? That's not true. Let me introduce you to my daughter. Julie stopped right behind David and Victoria. This is my daughter, Julie. She's 20 this year. I gestured toward her with my hand. David and Victoria turned around to look behind them.
What?
No way.
They were clearly shocked to see that I had a daughter, and they stood frozen, mouths open, staring at Julie. Confused by their strange behavior, Julie greeted them.
Hi, David and Victoria.
As I tilted my head in confusion, Julie leaned in and whispered to me.
You know, the challenging students I've been tutoring.
Julie explained that they were the parents of her tutoring students. As Julie and I stood side by side, David's expression slowly returned. He furrowed his brow, pointing between me and Julie, struggling to say something.
That can't be. Julie is. Wait, no way.
He was so confused that he could barely get the words out, his eyes darting around in disbelief. Now that I think of it, Julie once mentioned a particularly challenging student. The student was in middle school, but Julie had been teaching her from elementary level work, helping her catch up. Her grades had improved significantly. It seemed that the student's parents doted on Grace, leaving the younger daughter with a low sense of self-worth. However, after Julie began tutoring her, the student regained her confidence and even started attending school again. The parents were thrilled and had praised Julie as an excellent tutor.
Julie is Mary's daughter, but she's supposed to be infertile. Does she really have a child? How? I don't understand.
It seemed David's mind was tangled up because he was still stuck on the idea that I was infertile. How long are you going to keep calling me infertile? Whether it was true or not, it's rude. Maybe I just wasn't a good match for you. I remarried about a year after our divorce, and I had Julie soon after.
No, that's impossible. Mary was supposed to be defective, unable to have kids. How does she have a child? Did you find an abandoned baby? Adopted? Oh, I get it. She must be your husband's kid from a previous marriage, probably with some sketchy guy who's been married 3 times.
At the barrage of rude comments, even the usually calm Julie frowned. Her lips were slightly pursed, and she had a more combative expression on her face. Take a good look. Julie and I look just alike. People have been saying she looks like her mom since she was a baby.
Well, now that you mention it, she does look alike.
David looked back and forth between Julie and me, muttering with frustration. Unfortunately for him, we looked too similar for him to even pretend otherwise. You've met Julie, the tutor, several times now. Didn't you notice she looked like me?
Well, now that you say it, but I never imagined Mary could have a child.
Victoria mumbled, her words trailing off. Her words trailed off, barely audible. Victoria, clearly disheartened, hunched over and blatantly avoided eye contact with me. David, I was heartbroken when you suddenly asked for a divorce, but thanks to that, I now have a wonderful husband and a lovely daughter. I guess I should thank you for letting me go. I had already told Julie about my divorce. From our conversation, she must have realized that David was my ex-husband. Though I hadn't gone into too much detail about the divorce, Julie could likely sense that David had been in the wrong. She seemed more exasperated than surprised or angry at this point. David, meanwhile, opened and closed his mouth repeatedly, gritting his teeth and running his hands through his hair. I'm sure he wanted to insult Julie, just as he'd called me an old lady earlier. But since both he and Victoria had come to trust Julie as a tutor, he seemed unable to find the words to criticize her.
Since Julie started tutoring our younger daughter, she's completely changed. Now she can prepare for high school properly. Julie's been a godsend.
According to what Julie had told me before, they had praised her to no end, calling her a lifesaver. I had been glad to hear they liked her so much, though I never imagined the parents were David and Victoria.
I can't believe this. If you remarried and had a child, why didn't you tell me? This is fraud. You fraudster.
David spat angrily, shouting whatever came to his mind. You never told me when you had a child either. And fraud? If you think I'd be intimidated by that, you're sorely mistaken. I was more exasperated than anything.
If I had known from the start that she was your daughter, I would have never let her into my territory. Tutors are a dime a dozen anyway. And I hate the way you all act like being a tutor is something special. It's just a part-time job after all.
Exactly. I mean, Julie can only tutor middle school students, right? We have a daughter in college, you know? And Grace is way smarter than Julie could ever be.
As soon as we fell silent, David and Victoria took the opportunity to launch into another round of insults. I sighed, realizing once again that it was impossible to have a reasonable conversation with them. As I was gathering my things, thinking it would be best to leave so we wouldn't disturb the cafe, a young girl suddenly came running over and hugged Julie.
Julie, I came to see you.
You scared me, Ashley.
I recognized the name Ashley. She was David and Victoria's younger daughter. Her face looked just like Grace's, so there was no mistaking it. Julie, eyes wide with surprise, gently hugged Ashley back. David and Victoria were equally shocked, but their expressions quickly twisted into disgust. Grace, their eldest daughter, was notorious for causing trouble, but I hadn't heard much about Ashley. As I recall, Ashley is about 5 years younger than Julie. When Grace finally moved on to middle school, there was a lot of buzz about her younger sister Ashley starting elementary school, as if Ashley's arrival would bring more trouble. However, I remember everyone being relieved when Ashley turned out to be quite calm and reserved. She was the complete opposite of Grace.
I saw on social media that you were excited about having lunch here, Julie, so I thought I might run into you. I'm so happy I did. Did you just get here too? Let's have some cake together.
Even though the air around us was tense, Ashley seemed oblivious, focusing only on Julie. Like a little puppy wagging its tail, she nuzzled her cheek against Julie's chest. It was David who pulled her away.
Ashley, what are you doing here? Get out. Go home.
He grabbed her by her collar and lightly shoved her backward, as if swatting away a bothersome insect. As Ashley stumbled, Julie quickly reached out to steady her. In an instant, Ashley's demeanor shifted from a sweet puppy to an emotionless figure. The look she gave David and Victoria was icy, colder than ice itself. It felt as though there was an invisible wall of rejection emanating from her.
What? You're the ones who should leave.
The girl who had just been so affectionate with Julie seemed like a completely different person. Her voice, her expression, everything had changed.
And didn't I hear you bad-mouthing Julie earlier?
No, not really.
Intimidated by Ashley, David averted his gaze to the floor. There was no trace of fatherly authority left in him.
Don't even try to deny it. I heard everything. You called her just a tutor and said she's stupid.
Victoria's right cheek twitched as she forced a nervous smile, trying to calm Ashley down.
Ashley, calm down. You've got it all wrong. Julie's mom came at us first, so we were just putting her in her place. That's all. Calm down.
But such a weak attempt at diffusing the situation wasn't going to work, and Ashley's pressure only intensified.
I'm where I am today because of Julie. Are you seriously saying she can be replaced? You two were buying her cake and thanking her not too long ago. What was that all about?
David, pathetic as he was, hung his head at a 90-degree angle, waiting silently for the storm to pass. Victoria could only stand there, flustered and panicked. I had only heard rumors about Ashley up until she was in elementary school. Apparently, she had trouble interacting with others and struggled to fit in with her peers. She was so different from Grace, who was always surrounded by her friends, or rather, commanding them. At the time, I just lightly thought about how different two sisters could be.
You're the one who saved me, Julie.
Julie gently rubbed Ashley's back as she grew more agitated. With that, Ashley's anger quickly subsided, and she leaned against Julie's shoulder.
Calm down, Ashley.
Yeah, sorry.
Just one word from Julie, and Ashley regained her composure.
I got mad because someone was bad-mouthing Julie. I was going to ignore it because my parents are idiots, but I couldn't hold back. I guess I was being immature.
She's still a 15-year-old middle schooler. It's understandable if she acts a little immature. Though I was surprised by how fiercely she stood up to David and Victoria, it seems like she's a good kid at heart. Ashley gave me a small greeting.
You're Julie's mom?
Yes, nice to meet you. I'm Mary. A smile appeared on Ashley's previously tense face.
Mary, I'm only here because of Julie.
With a kind smile, she began to express her feelings.
I hadn't gone to school since 3rd grade, and I didn't even go to my middle school at the beginning.
Though she spoke calmly, there was a hint of struggle in her voice. Julie sensed it too and stayed close by her side.
I didn't care about school or studying anymore. I thought none of it mattered. But somehow, I started wondering if this was really okay. Was it okay to stay cooped up at home forever? I was really scared.
With Julie standing on Ashley's right side, Victoria sidled up to her left. Victoria interrupted Ashley's words with an obviously forced smile.
You don't need to go to school as long as you're studying at home. Look, Grace is brilliant, and Ashley is just as capable. I mean, we've always had tutors for her, so she's been getting a better education than she would at school.
It was immediately clear. Victoria was concerned about appearances. She'd always boasted about Grace being adorable and brilliant, so having Ashley as a shut-in would be damaging to her image.
What? Me, capable? You've always compared me to Grace, calling me stupid and a failure.
Despite Victoria's weak resistance, Ashley bluntly revealed the truth.
Up until about a year ago, I couldn't even do multiplication. I'd been skipping school even before I officially stopped going, so I struggled with elementary level subjects. When you fall that far behind, there's no catching up. I thought my life was over.
Julie squeezed Ashley's hand tightly.
Don't say that, Ashley.
Yeah, I don't think like that anymore, so I'm fine. I've been reborn thanks to Julie.
Ashley had apparently had many tutors before, but she never opened up to any of them and lacked the motivation to learn. Moreover, the tutors couldn't meet David and Victoria's demands to turn Ashley into a top student who could get into the best high school in the state right away, so they quit soon after. At present, it was hopeless for her to enter the high school of her parents' choice. That would mean no college, no job, and possibly being a shut-in for years to come. It seemed that's what David and Victoria were worried about.
All they care about is their reputation, not my future. They're just embarrassed to have a stupid, shut-in daughter. They've always only cared about Grace, who's smart and pretty. When Grace bullied me, they told me, if you're upset, get smarter than Grace.
David remained still, his head bowed without moving an inch. Only Victoria, sweating on her forehead, continued denying everything.
That's not true. Ashley's been going to school for the past 6 months. She's not a shut-in anymore, and she's caught up on her studies. Isn't that amazing? She's practically learned 6 or 7 years worth of material in no time. She's really brilliant.
Even though Ashley tried to shake her off, Victoria clung to her with that fake smile. It was clear now, Ashley's claims were true. Ashley had been neglected in favor of her brilliant sister, Grace. But now, Victoria was suddenly showering Ashley with praise, trying to boast to me. Ashley must have longed for her parents' approval as a child. But hearing this empty praise now probably felt hollow to her.
Stop it. Don't cling to me. Get away. Stop pretending to be my mom.
Ashley shoved Victoria hard. Victoria stumbled backward, but no one was there to catch her, so she fell flat on her rear. Ashley looked down at Victoria, who continued to smile awkwardly like a broken doll, and coldly dropped her words.
The only person who ever really faced me was Julie.
Despite the pressure from her parents to get Ashley into the best high school in the state, and despite Ashley's sour attitude, Julie never gave up on her. As a result, Ashley not only opened up and started focusing on her studies, but she also became curious about the bright world Julie described outside her home. Ashley was grateful because after almost 5 years, she was finally able to step outside again.
If that's how it was going to be.
David, who had been silent and keeping a low profile, muttered under his breath.
If that's how it was going to be, I wish you'd just stay to shut in. Don't come out and embarrass yourself, especially not in front of my ex-wife Mary. A dumb, plain, ugly kid like you should just stay hidden. Grace is the only daughter I need. She's the genius.
David was an awful father.
I embarrassed myself? No, you're the ones who embarrassed yourselves.
Ashley's anger had already faded, and now she just looked exhausted with disbelief. Just then, a woman approached, her heels clicking as she walked briskly toward us. She stepped between Ashley and Julie, putting an arm around each of their shoulders.
What's all the fuss about?
Oh no, it's Grace. Her appearance had changed a lot, but I recognized her instantly. All the terrifying rumors about her flooded back into my mind, sending a chill down my spine. While I tensed up, David's face lit up with hope.
This is my daughter.
With the force of a tackle, David pushed between Julie and Grace, grabbing Grace's shoulder firmly, while she looked at him in shock.
Look at her. Isn't she gorgeous? She was even scouted to be a model. Look how long her legs are. She's got big, bright eyes just like mine. This is my pride and joy.
Victoria quickly pulled Ashley away and stood proudly next to Grace.
This is the princess of our family, Grace. She's a vibrant college student. Her sharp nose is just like mine, and her great figure, that's from me too.
It's true. Grace was beautiful, with striking features and an impressive figure. As parents, it was understandable that they would be proud. But it was unforgivable how they doted only on Grace while putting down Ashley, who was quieter and more reserved.
Grace goes to the same college as the great Julie. I'm sure you know what kind of prestigious school that is, Mary. Isn't it amazing? Cute and smart. Our Grace is practically a gift from the gods.
But you know, even in the same college, there's a big difference in academic ability. I mean, you have some tutors who think they're special just for teaching middle schoolers how to do multiplication. Who could that be, Julie?
They truly believed Grace was the best. Not only did they praise her endlessly, but they couldn't seem to feel satisfied unless they were tearing down Ashley or Julie. My face grew hot, and I couldn't stay silent any longer. I was about to speak.
What?
Grace's loud voice cut through the air, silencing mine.
You two need to stop acting like you're all that.
David and Victoria flinched, their shoulders trembling. Grace's voice had far more power than Ashley's outburst, and even I instinctively shrank back. Her tone was commanding, almost like that of a true villain. Oh no, the notorious Grace is about to cause a scene. This is scary. Wanting to protect Julie, I pulled her behind me.
Who are you calling a tutor who boasts about teaching multiplication? You guys couldn't even teach your daughter how to do it.
Well, that's because Ashley didn't have any motivation. She's plain, stupid, and ugly. There's no saving her. She's the complete opposite of our perfect Grace, right?
Victoria desperately tried to make excuses, attempting to appease Grace. But Grace shot a fierce glare.
Yeah, that's right. Ashley was unmotivated. No matter what tutor came, it was a waste. It was a waste of money, and honestly, I thought they should have just given that money to me.
I'm sorry.
It seemed even her parents couldn't control Grace when she was in one of her moods. Victoria tried her best to calm her down, while David once again bowed his head, erasing his presence. This was the same daughter they had bragged about so much, and now look at them.
But the one who managed to turn around the impossible case of Ashley was Julie, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Wait, is Grace furious because of Julie? Is she mad on Julie's behalf?
You're right. There's a difference in academic ability within the university. But Julie is a top student and a scholarship recipient. You get that? Compared to her, I'm the dumb one.
But Grace, you're special.
Grace's temple twitched.
Get real already, you stupid parents.
Stupid parents.
Victoria collapsed to the floor, completely overwhelmed by Grace's words. Grace wasn't the person I had imagined. Sure, her language was harsh, but she was standing up for Julie. Grace turned to Julie and apologized.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Julie glanced briefly at Ashley.
David, Victoria, if I may, I'd like to say a few words as well.
Julie, with impeccable manners, placed her hands in front of her and politely asked for permission to speak. Victoria, who was in shock, and David, who had seemingly vanished, didn't respond. So Julie took a deep breath and continued speaking.
Are your eyes blind?
What?
David and Victoria looked up in disbelief at the question.
You didn't notice that I look exactly like my mom, but that's fine. From my perspective, Grace and Ashley look exactly alike too. I admit Grace is beautiful. So, which part of Ashley is ugly?
Ashley, who had been belittled until now, wasn't as polished yet, but she had fine features. Just like Julie said, she and Grace looked strikingly similar.
And it's not just about appearance. As you said earlier, Victoria, Ashley managed to complete several years' worth of studies in just 1 year. That's not something just anyone can do. Is Ashley really as stupid as you say?
Well,
Victoria bit her lip, glaring resentfully at Julie. Meanwhile, David kept his head down, trying to avoid their anger, but he couldn't resist muttering under his breath like a coward.
A little brat acting all high and mighty.
Though timid, he couldn't keep his nasty nature quiet. At that moment, both Grace and Ashley shouted.
Don't talk badly about Julie.
Their voices harmonized perfectly. David widened his eyes and shrank his shoulders.
Ashley wasn't the only one who was saved. So was I.
As Grace matured, she had grown to resent her loud and overbearing parents and had stopped openly causing trouble.
It's not that my parents were nagging at me. They'd snap at any teacher or parent who tried to correct me. Once, I got frustrated and hit a kid standing in front of me. And according to these two, it was the kid's fault for standing there cluelessly. Hilarious, right?
Grace had realized she was heading toward isolation. But by then, she had earned a reputation as a troublemaker, and no one wanted to be her friend. And even if someone tried to get close to her, her parents would inevitably swoop in at the slightest incident. There was no room for jokes or casual conversations with friends under those conditions. In the end, the only people who stuck around were those in the bad crowd. But those weren't real friends, and Grace admitted it left her feeling empty.
But Julie was different.
When Julie came over as a tutor, she happened to run into Grace, who had just come home and carelessly thrown her socks into the living room.
Wouldn't it be better to put your socks in the laundry?
Despite Grace's revealing clothes and heavy makeup, Julie casually pointed this out without hesitation. Grace had heard plenty of people talk behind her back, but no one had ever directly called her out before. It was a new experience for her. Then, they discovered they were attending the same college, and the two became close friends.
I made my first real friend.
Me too. Julie is my first real friend.
Grace cut ties with her bad crowd, and through Julie, she started making new friends. Ashley also had taken her first steps out of the house.
The reason we've changed is because Julie was there for us.
Grace and Ashley both reached out and held Julie's hand. Their steady gaze showed how much they genuinely trusted her.
That's ridiculous. You're putting this girl on too much of a pedestal. You've been brainwashed by a little girl. Grace, wake up.
Victoria pleaded with Grace in a trembling voice. Grace's expression instantly twisted with rejection.
No, actually, I've just woken up. If anything, it's your fault I turned out this way. You raised me with, Grace can do no wrong, she's perfect. So I got the wrong idea. The world doesn't revolve around me. I'm not special. I'm just an ordinary girl.
I've woken up too. You always told me, you're no good, you're a failure, you're ugly. You brainwashed me. The reason I couldn't fit in at school is because of you and Grace doing whatever you wanted. Getting treated like I was some sort of problem since first grade. It was cruel.
Grace and Ashley both looked at David and Victoria with eyes full of contempt. For them, Grace was their pride and joy, and Ashley was the failure. How must it feel to be scorned by both?
Damn it!
David's crooked neck slowly straightened. His face flushed red, and his eyes welled up with tears.
This is all you're doing, isn't it?
His rage suddenly turned toward me.
You used Julie to get close to my kids, didn't you? Now that I think about it, it's a lie that you didn't know she was tutoring at my house. Even if it wasn't part of some plan, you would have mentioned where she worked.
Even though Julie was just a part-time tutor, she took her job seriously. That's why she never discussed the specific details of her work, not even with me. This accusation was absurd.
You brainwashed my kids to destroy my family. What a grand revenge scheme. It's been over 20 years since I cheated on you with Victoria and left you, and you're still burning with revenge? That's terrifying. Who knows what you'll do next? I'm going to the police.
David's dramatic threats began again. Hearing the word police made my heart skip for a second, but neither Julie nor I had done anything wrong. The police? What crime would that be for?
Well,
I genuinely asked out of curiosity, and David's eyes darted nervously. When intimidated, I might flinch, but honestly, his threats were hollow. There is no damage to me. However, to my surprise, Grace was visibly disgusted.
Wait, that's how you two got together? An affair and a marriage through cheating? That's seriously messed up.
She had already distanced herself emotionally from David and Victoria, but now she was even more disillusioned.
You're wrong, Grace. Mary was infertile. If you get married and can't have kids, that's marriage fraud, right? I was just saving your poor father from being tricked.
David and Victoria were determined to stick to their stance of not being at fault, no matter what. They had likely lived their whole lives this way, getting by with excuses.
That's exactly the problem.
What do you mean?
Blaming others and playing the victim. This behavior had warped both Grace and Ashley's lives. Grace and Ashley had finally realized how abnormal their parents were. The only ones unaware of it were David and Victoria themselves.
Grace, don't you see? Your dad and I aren't to blame. This worthless woman was just holding a grudge. You can't believe anything these people say. They'll drive you crazy.
It was hard to understand what Victoria was so dissatisfied with, considering that both Grace and Ashley were now leading fulfilling lives. It wasn't like she wanted Grace to go back to running with a bad crowd or Ashley to retreat into her shell again.
That's exactly the problem.
Ashley, what do you mean?
Would calmly explaining things make David and Victoria finally wake up? No, even if that were possible, I have no reason to be the one to do it. Besides, it seems that neither Grace nor Ashley have any expectations left for them.
Anyway, you two are in the way, so get out.
how can you talk to your parents like that? This is all that Julie's influence.
David protested, but Grace ignored him and firmly pushed him toward the exit. Ashley, too, began shoving Victoria out of the cafe.
Stop it. What are you doing? Why? Come on. Who's more important, your parents or that girl?
As Victoria was being pushed out, she asked a question. Without missing a beat, Grace and Ashley responded in unison again.
Julie.
Of course, why even ask? I was surprised. Perhaps Victoria had truly believed she held absolute trust as a parent.
Grace.
Victoria's shoulders slumped as all the strength drained from her.
Why? Where are your parents?
David, too, crumpled to the floor like a deflated balloon, unable to stand. But Grace and Ashley continued pushing them out, leaving them sitting on the ground outside the cafe. They sat on the ground outside the cafe, not moving, and through the glass, I could see them mouthing the word Grace.
Well, now that the troublemakers are gone, how about we have some cake, Julie?
Yeah, sounds good.
There are some parents in this world that you're better off without. As I watched Grace and Ashley smiling warmly at Julie, who they were completely attached to, I couldn't help but smile too. As it turned out, the reason we ended up in this commotion at the cafe by the OBGYN was because of Grace's health issue. Originally, Julie had planned to quietly accompany her, but then David and Victoria decided to interfere. If they found out Grace's illness was related to her interactions with a man, David and Victoria would probably just blame the guy. That's why Julie also booked an appointment for herself at the same time to keep an eye on things. The reason she asked me to drive them was just in case something went wrong. I think she wanted me to act as a backup if things escalated, though instead the situation got out of hand for a completely different reason. When Grace's illness was revealed, she simply said,
What's wrong with me having fun with guys? Coming from parents who had an affair and a marriage based on cheating?
Since then, whenever David and Victoria start causing a scene, Grace shuts them down by saying,
What do you cheaters have to say about anything?
It's a perfect way to silence them. Their dishonesty leaves them with no defense. Afterward, Ashley didn't end up attending the top high school in the state like David and Victoria had wanted.
See, she's a failure, just like I said. Or maybe it's the tutor's fault.
The fact that Ashley even returned to school was a huge accomplishment, but they refused to acknowledge her effort. Their character was truly rotten to the core. Although Julie was fired as a tutor, she continued her friendship with Ashley. I heard that she told David and Victoria quite clearly,
Perhaps you failed in making her a puppet. Ashley has a will of her own.
David and Victoria frowned in displeasure. Grace has secured a jobs offer without any issues. Ashley is also pursuing further education with her future in mind. The day when both their pride, Grace, and their so-called failure, Ashley, leave them is fast approaching. Julie has grown into an incredibly compassionate and wonderful young woman, much more than I had realized.
You know, Grace may dress flashy, but she's actually pretty serious underneath it all.
Since she was attending college, I'm sure she was working hard on her studies too. I felt regret for avoiding her simply based on the bad things I'd heard from others. We really shouldn't judge people by their appearance. You are amazing, being able to connect with everyone without any bias. Julie smiled modestly, clearly a little shy. The bitter memories of my divorce 23 years ago had always weighed heavily on my heart, but thanks to Julie, I felt like that burden had finally been washed away. I decided to strive to be someone I could be proud of as the mother of such an amazing daughter.